Good afternoon, everybody. But we need to get to business. I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for March 15th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Campbell, Camper, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gant,
Here.
Garrett, Gillespie, Hawk, Hicks, Lambert, Lynn, Miller, Ogles, Sexton, Shaw, Sparks, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Zachary, Vice Chairman Baum, Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Do we have any personal orders or announcements? Before I have one, and is he here? Oh, there. We have a new finance member today, Mr. Jason Hodges, who was assigned by the Speaker to this august committee. We're so very sorry that you have missed the bulk of the budget hearings, so you don't have the full experience of the committee, but we'll try our best to give you as much of the full experience as we can throughout the remainder of the session. Yes, and you can, as has been noted by a number of your colleagues, all of the budget hearings are online, and we could ask you to do a 3-line summary of each one after you watch them. So we'll look forward to hearing that from you. All right, it's getting nasty up here. Do we have any other personal orders or announcements? Mr. Chairman Whitson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to say a Marine joke, but Leader Camper and Colonel Wendell and I, we just want to make sure we're proud to have a Marine on the committee now. I think you'll add a lot to it, but just remind members to talk real slow and use little words, okay?
Enough. We do have business to attend to today, quite a bit actually. We have 10 bills on our calendar, and then we have some hearings after. So in respect of everybody's time, we will get underway. And first, we're going to take up our calendar. The first item on our calendar is House Bill 2660. It's by Speaker Sexton and Chairman Lafferty. Chairman Lafferty is with us today to present the bill. We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. This is the PBM bill, bringing here on behalf of Speaker Sexton. This legislation is going to authorize the Commissioner of Commerce to start taking a look at the policies regarding pharmacy and pharmacy benefit managers. This will put the regulation of PBMs the same level as it is with insurance companies. It will authorize the department to provide additional oversight where the legislature has already determined that PBMs are restricted to ensure patient access to affordable drugs. These rules will include, but not be limited to, implementing PBM audits that are necessary to ensure compliance, provide for additional requirements for PBMs to obtain licensure, implement a complaint and administrative hearing process to enforce sanctions for PBMs that violate any portion of this, and authorize the commissioner to charge a fee to be paid by the PBMs to help cover the administration of compliance and auditing. With that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Lafferty. You've heard the description of the bill. Any questions? Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
No, I just want to thank the speaker and you for carrying this. I mean, maybe the audience doesn't know much about PBMs, but they do drive cost up and stifle competition. It's basically a racket and an oligopoly. So thank you, Speaker, for carrying this.
I see no other questions. We are voting on House Bill 2660. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 2660 moves on to calendar and rules. Item number 2 on our calendar, House Bill 2550, also by Chairman Lafferty. We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For numerous years, it has been a charge of $50 if you are caught running the stop sign that is hung out on the side of a school bus. This bill is simply going to increase that fee from $50 to $200. And with that, I'll take any questions.
We have questions for the chairman. Seeing none, we're voting on House Bill 2550. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 2550 moves on to calendar and rules. This is the Lafferty calendar today. The final item on that, item number 3, House Bill 813. Chairman Lafferty, you have a motion and you have a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. This bill is the one we've called the Food Freedom Act. The idea is to open up the ability for locals to make their own food products for distribution in their local communities.
Chairman Lafferty, I do believe there's an amendment that we need to attach to the bill, which, is a significant portion, if not rewriting. So let's get that amendment in place, if you're good with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Drafting code 014961. Is that what you have, Chairman?
Let me find it again. My apologies. Too many pieces of paper here. Too many bills on the Lafferty calendar today. Zero 14961. Yes, ma'am.
All right, we have a motion and a second on Amendment 014961. Any objection to voting on the amendment? Seeing none, we're voting on that amendment. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment 014961 is attached to House Bill 813. Chairman Lafferty, proceed with your explanation, please.
Thank you. Thank you. This is, we're trying to make it easier for local individuals, whether they're rural, city, suburban, whatever, the opportunity to try and make a little extra money by bringing the next Little Debbie cake to market. Little Debbie is the best case scenario. Most often, we're probably just looking to help people fill budgets, fill holes in their home budget. The idea here is more money will go to local producers. There will be greater spending in the state, things sourced here, purchased here. Hopefully, in a best case scenario, back to my Little Debbie remark, this leads someone into something that's big that employs tens of thousands of people. Along the way, though, we are bringing food products to the market from kitchens where now you can do this from your home kitchen. You don't have to go and find a licensed vendor, a licensed shop, a commercial kitchen to do this. You'll be able to do this from your home without incurring those costs and hopefully keep those extra dollars in your pocket. Just trying to make it easier for folks to make a little extra change when they can. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not the same legislation was this morning in ag, is it?
No, sir.
Okay. I just want to clear it up. I appreciate you bringing this. I just want to make sure we wasn't talking about the same piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, you and I have had a great deal of discussion about this bill, both on and offline, and I do have some concerns about it. One of the issues, I believe, when we discussed it perhaps in sub, you mentioned that the advantage, and I'm all about people having an opportunity to make extra income and use their talents in ways that might help them do that. But this, to me, is a health and safety issue, and that's where my concerns come from. I believe you had mentioned in your testimony in sub that people would be aware of who produced the product if there's an issue because they'd be selling it in their community. But then, as I understand it, there's no restriction on shipping this across the state, or this bill really does not have any kind of restrictions about transport or the geography in which these products can be sold. Is that correct?
That is correct. I do believe, and I don't have it right underneath me this second, there is a comment. This is for interstate trade, so inside the state of Tennessee.
But
And
from Memphis to Mountain City.
Memphis to Mountain City.
And, again, when you're talking about things in home kitchens, and I understand that meat products are eliminated just because of concerns about spoilage, but, I hope that my kitchen is clean and that if I invited you all to dinner, you wouldn't be afraid to come. But at the same time, nobody's checking my kitchen to be sure that it is clean enough to feed other people. My family and I can eat there at our own risk, I suppose. But again, I just have some concerns about the health and safety and the fact that there's no upper limits on how much business you can do from your home kitchen, and there is just no opportunity for any kind of inspection. So for that reason, I'll be voting against your bill. Is there any other discussion or comments? Chairman Zachary, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Lafferty, can you describe what will be on the packaging, kind of in line with Chair Lady Hazelwood's comments? How will people know, how will consumers know that this has been produced in a kitchen, that, whatever those stipulations are around that, what does the packaging look like on these? Because I do support the bill, and if the packaging provides an awareness to those who are buying it, then it'll be up to them to make that decision. So can you walk us through that, please?
I sure can. So it is required to be extensively, thoroughly, whatever the right word is, labeled. The following information must be provided: the name, the home address, and the phone number of the producer of the item, the common or usual name of the homemade item. This is all to be on the disclosure, on the packaging. The ingredients of the food item in descending order of prominence. So if it's got a lot of A, then it would go to whatever it is, amount of B, and down the list. The statement will be on the packaging also that says this product was produced at a private residence that is exempt from state licensing and inspection. This product may contain allergens. That's the kind of things that are going to be on the packaging for this particular product. And kind of what I envision with this, nobody's going to start baking things in their kitchen and selling it to total strangers online. What I envision is a small mom and pop producer that's got a gift that their friends and neighbors know about, and you kind of start there and expand out from that, with the hope that you hit a point where you outgrow your kitchen because you make so much money, or you get to the point where you do need to go and find that commercial kitchen and start hiring those services again. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I hope I answered your question about the packaging.
And just to follow up on that, Chairman, there's nothing in this bill as it currently written that prevents somebody from doing those things that you just mentioned, from selling online or selling a wide distribution. There's no limits on distribution or methodology of sales included in your bill.
The only limit that I could think of is the fact that people around the state would not know about it. That's the only limitation that I could think of.
Right, thank you. Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to back up a little bit, Chairman Lafferty, if I can. So what we're talking about is, let's say someone has a cookie business and they're selling $10,000 worth of cookies a year from their own home, which seems like a lot, but this is a real situation back at home. They wanted to expand. They could not expand because they were not producing those cookies in a licensed commercial kitchen. Therefore, they could not sell them at the grocery store or at the convenience store down the street. So what this bill would do in that specific situation, if you may answer, would allow that individual to do it regardless of Shelby County Health Department rules or any local rules?
In their personal kitchen, if they've reached that level of success where they are that high, yes. If they've got the physical capacity, then yes, they could continue to do so. And I wouldn't think that they would have gotten that successful had they made customers sick along the way or turned out a product that wasn't worth having.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the sponsor, we talked about this several times, and I appreciate the premise of the bill. I just thought of another kind of question or caveat I had. And please take this as all constructive criticism. But there's an organization just south, and I believe it's a Mendonite. I'm thinking just south of Holowall that I stop sometimes. Local kitchen attached to a residence. When I go in the door, I can actually see the kitchen. I can smell the kitchen. I can see the food. So it's viewable for me to buy products there. Something I'm a little worried with your legislation, and I work on a lot of restaurants. A lot of restaurants we work on, very visual kitchens. I mean, in the industry, we found a long time ago, if people can see in the kitchen, they feel more comfortable to buy your product. The reservations I have is we're not inspecting. There's no caveats or no availability for the public to see the goods, and then we're shipping. If the intent is to keep it in the local community, and not saying that we are shipping, but there's no guardrails to prevent from shipping. If the intent of the legislation is to keep it local, I'm very concerned in the fact that we could actually be packaging and then adding another layer of distribution to an unregulated product. Just some concerns I have. I appreciate the intent of the legislation, but I really wish there was either some maximum, a point at which, this applies for under $4,800 maybe, where the reversion is required for revenue, or some provision that we allow visibility to the kitchen. And I guess the next question I actually have is, what are we doing for bad performers? Say, for instance, we have an outbreak and people do get sick. Once they're cited in the Department of Health or somebody rushes in to intervene, can they still package and ship the following week? Or what clawback provision do we have of once we enable this labeling and distribution of goods, what clawback provision is there in this legislation? Thank you, sponsor.
Thank you for the question. Try and address the first part. The market, I would hope, would act as that guardrail. Again, if you're turning out a product that nobody wants to buy, you're not getting anybody sick. Anybody that can read the label can decide for themselves whether or not this is something that I want to pick up. Again, back to the envisioning, this is going to start small. Anybody that's starting up new for this is going to start small by necessity. They don't have a market. They can't just turn out. I would assume that they couldn't just turn out half a ton of cookies and expect to sell them. They would have put in all that money and not know if they've got a market for it. That doesn't make a whole lot of business sense. As far as clawbacks, if you get caught, and I don't have anything in this legislation, that is a great question. As far as that goes, I would expect if there is something grossly negligent going on, that the health department that inspects this would be able to shut that operation down. But again, I did not address that directly in this legislation. So,
Representative Ogles.
And the only reason that, thank you, Madam Chair, and the only reason that draws a concern, because with restaurants and health facilities, if you're inspected and you don't meet that minimum score, you have a certain window in which you have to be, that you can re-inspect and then get certified to continue business before your business is even interrupted. What I'm afraid of is though well-intended, if we don't have some provision to suspend the labeling with the legislation, you could literally have somebody produce a product, ship it, hurt people, and then as a state, we have no provision to suspend them from being able to do that, other than, I guess you would have to come under a provision of the fire marshal and declare it a public nuisance and padlock your home. I don't know what other provision you'd use to intervene to stop, declare them a public nuisance. That's my concern. Thank you, sponsor.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. What you're hearing, I think, from most of the speakers, the intentions is well. It's a good idea to, how do you support small businesses? My question, in your kitchen, are you able to produce all types of products? For example, boiled, broiled, baked? That's first question.
Okay.
Chairman Lafferty.
Anything that's not time and temperature sensitive, anything that's not going to be spoiling real quickly, anything that doesn't have to be kept frozen, things like that would be what we're talking about here.
For example, give me several.
Cookies, cakes, some breads, I imagine would fit into that category, jams, jellies. If I weren't on the spot, I might be able to come up with a few more.
Right, few more, okay. But again, going back to how do you regulate it when you said it's going to be community-based, but I mean, there's some ingenious people when it comes to selling online products. Next question, the food trucks that we are familiar with, are they licensed? I mean, food trucks?
I have not looked into the food truck
Okay,
industry.
if they're licensed, okay. But again, no regulations. So how do you, for an example, protect the safety and the health of the individuals that may be purchasing the products?
And I might add that you could have that issue at your favorite restaurant. You could have a bad actor in the kitchen that is up to no good out of the blue. As far as believe it or not, for 100+ years in this country, we didn't have regulations. And yet we've come this far.
Right.
And we've almost got to the point in this country where we have not almost, we are at the point in this country where regulations stifle innovation. I think most of us that have got a few years on it have known somebody that has fussed about a rule or regulation that has prevented them from doing something that they thought might help their business. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Well, as you said, not having read all the language, but there would be a limit of the type of products that can be produced at home.
Correct.
Which is a good thing, but who will be able to monitor that? Because again, when you say bad actors, if the bad actor knows that this product I shouldn't mass produce it or in my kitchen, but I'm going to do it anyway because there's nobody's watching, and I can think of a number of things that people
Sure.
can possibly do, but
And I suspect there are already a number of kitchens operating around this state where
Probably
people are
so.
selling food that we don't know anything about.
and you're probably right about that.
And that brings me back to the market.
Yeah.
If I am making this to put some extra money in my family's household budget, it is in my best interest. It is self-serving of me to provide a product that is clean, that is safe, that is ready for consumption. If I am the grocer or the market in the neighborhood, I don't want to sell anything to my customers that's going to hurt them because I want them to continue coming to my market. So I'm going to make sure that whoever's making that is doing a good job and serving a good product. When it branches out to folks across the state, I don't know how many people are going to click Jimmy's Jellies from Mountain City and go, hey, I'll take a dozen of them. Don't know anything about him, but hey, let's order it up because he's got a pretty web page. I'm sure it could happen.
Madam question, Chair Lady, last question. Are you getting any pushback from, I guess, convenience stores, community stores, or any pushback from
No,
those
sir.
with the overhead?
I'm not. The The stories that I've heard are from people that they're making small batches, but they're doing it by the law. They're not doing it outside the law. They are going and paying for space someplace where they can use a commercial kitchen. One in my neck of the woods, we got a little Butler and Bailey market. There's a couple that goes back there and makes their jellies. They have to load up the vehicle. They have to go to the market. They have to pay for their time in there. Then they've got to put it back in the car and they've got to go back again. All of that cost, as everybody in here knows, ends up to the consumer. If they could cut that out, keep charging what they've got, they just got a nice pay raise. And maybe they can invest that money into something and help grow that business even further.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Committee, I just want to bring us around that I feel like we're way overthinking this. And the truth is, every one of you who are against it, if we went to your communities, we would find at your local farmers market that this is abundantly happening every day. And in East Tennessee, where I'm from, God's country, we have Harvest Street festivals. And we go on purpose to buy all the wonderful baked goods and jellies and jams, all kind of stuff on purpose for that. I just feel like we're way overthinking this. And I'll leave you one final thought. I've been privileged to spend a lot of time in Western and Northern Africa. I've never had anybody have to tell me what to eat and what not to eat while I'm in Western and Northern Africa. There's things that'll kill a person like me if you're not careful. This conversation, I feel like we're taking out just the average person's common sense. If you see cat hair in the cookie, you're not going to buy it. Guys, we're way overthinking
Cat
it.
hair doesn't always show up.
But I just want to remind the committee that there's a wonderful thing about freedom and a wonderful thing about just common sense for each one of us, and it's happening in your district right now. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you. Move previous question.
Is there objection? All right. We have objections. We are I saw several hands. We are voting on whether or not to call the previous question. A vote aye is to call the previous question. Nay is to continue discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The ayes do have it. So we're calling the question. All those in favor of House Bill 813, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, committee. I'm glad I could be so much entertainment for you all today.
813 does move to calendar and rules.
Yeah. Some samples.
Next on our list, hopefully a less robust discussion will ensue for House Bill 1890 by Chairman Haston. Not that we want to discount your bill at all, sir. We have a motion. We have a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a baked goods bill. Thank you. What this bill does is it changes the definition of elementary schools from K through 6 through pre-K through 6 for purposes of receiving federal funding. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? We'll be voting on House Bill 1890 as the question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those are little weak ayes after the previous discussion. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 1890 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee.
Item number 5 on our calendar, Chairman Howell. I almost didn't see you there. House Bill 2706. We have a motion and a second. Chairman Howell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a baking bill.
And we're grateful.
It's not an education bill. It's a pothole bill. You get a lot of different variety in here, don't you? I believe do I need to put this amendment on, Madam?
We do. There is a committee amendment, drafting code 014998, which
That's
I
what I
believe
have.
is includes funding from the treasurer. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
From the
correct.
treasurer's office. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of Amendment 014998, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment is attached. Chairman Howell, if you would tell us what your bill does as amended and funded.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By way of background, first of all, this bill was written in consultation with TDOT and Treasurer Lillard and Treasurer's Office. The Treasurer's Office is responsible, you may not know this, but the Treasurer's Office is responsible for settling claims brought by citizens whose vehicles may have been damaged by various road hazards, which includes potholes on Tennessee's state and federal highways. I'm sure we don't know anything about potholes this year, do we? I began discussion with the Treasurer Lillard and TDOT some time ago because there has been in my opinion, a disconnect in communication and getting those claims settled in a timely manner. The treasurer, because of statute of limitations, must get the information in a timely fashion in order to settle the claims. If it isn't given in a timely manner, then the claim is denied. Some of you are, I know, familiar with that. This is an attempt to streamline the situation. An example of why we need to address this, there were 1,800 claims filed in 2021. We were able to settle 12 of those claims, and I hope that we can do better. This bill will allow TDOT and the treasurer to cooperate in creating a streamlined reporting system so our citizens are much better served. The bill does have a fiscal note, but I do have a funding letter, as the chair lady mentioned, and I'd be glad to address any questions you may have.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation. Are there questions? Seeing none. Ready to vote? We're voting on House Bill 2706 as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Chairman Howell, your bill moves to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee.
Item number 6 on our calendar, House Bill 2145, Chairman Littleton. We have a motion and second. Chairman Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Lady Chairman. I'm not even going to tease about food. I'm going straight for the bill. This is the Tennessee Foster's Hope. There's two parts of it. The first part of the bill will expand eligibility for extension of foster care services, a wraparound service program for young adults still in DCS custody when they turn 18. The eligibility will be expanded to include full-time employment and non-credit bearing vocational training programs. Current eligibility is limited to the enrollment in school or a work readiness program. This expansion is expected to serve over 300 additional youth. Part 2 of this bill will allow DCS to pay a per diem to relative caregivers instead of placing a child in full custody. DCS does not currently reimburse caregivers who assume custody of a child they are related to. This prevents many relative caregivers from accepting this responsibility, resulting in the child going into full state custody at the full daily foster care rate. Under this proposal, DCS would reimburse relative caregivers at 50% of the daily foster care board rate for the level of care assigned to the child. To be eligible, relative caregivers would have to satisfy screening and training requirements set out by DCS to ensure the child's safety.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation. Leader Lamberth, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And to the sponsor, one, thank you for carrying this bill. And I don't say this because of the top two names on the actual bill, but Chairman, this is something you've talked about for years. I mean, this bill actually helps us as a state to keep children with their biological families where that's appropriate and give them a little help. I mean, we have for a long time incentivized and helped strangers to come in and help in times of need for children that desperately need a safe home to go to. And this bill, for the first time in a long time, will actually help the families of some of these children to be able to get a little assistance as well. So I know it does many other things, but I wanted to highlight that because I know it's something you've championed for a long time. And so, Chairman, I appreciate your leadership on this, and I hope everybody votes for the bill.
Other questions or comments? Chairman Littleton.
It is a proven fact that especially older children, if they're not with their family members, they move from home to home, and then they start failing in school, and then they get into trouble. So we're hoping that this will help solve a lot of that problem and keep these children in with their families.
Again, I think we all appreciate your heart for children, expressed in so many ways up here. And, foster children, although technically and legally they're an adult at 18, we all know that 18-year-olds don't always make adult decisions. They need guidance, they need direction, they need support. So providing that, I think, is a worthy cause. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. I'm sorry. Representative Miller, I
Thank
did
you,
not see your hand.
Madam Leader. Great bill. You did mention that there would be an additional 300 children that's coming into the program.
Chairman Littleton.
Actually, the 300 would stay in the program.
Okay.
Right now, they have to go to school, to college. But if they want to go to work, then they can go to work. But this will still help them have some of the services to wrap around them to help them. We all know the 18-year-olds, a lot of them are not ready. I had a daughter that should have been my mother. She was born like an adult, but not the rest of them so much. So, around 18, they just quite don't know what they want to do. So this gives them the opportunity to stay in with the services and find a job and be a productive citizen.
And as the speaker said, the leader, that this is the first time we've done this. Is this to this extent, first time we've done this?
It is first time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All right, with accolades for the sponsor, I think we know how this vote will go, but we need to take the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Lady Chair and members.
House Bill 2145 goes on to calendar and rules. Item number 7, House Bill 2179 by Chairman Moon. Chairman Moon, you have a motion, you have a second, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. House Bill 2179 allows TEMA to designate multiple and alternate emergency service coordinators. Additionally, the bill will give TEMA much needed authority to enforce the mandatory training for these coordinators. The fiscal note is $75,600. Commissioner Ely has provided a funding letter from the administration for the increase in state expenditures. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Madam Chair Lady.
You've heard the explanation. Are there questions, comments? Questions been called on the bill? No objection to calling the question. We are voting on House Bill 2179. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Chairman Moon, your calendar rules, your next stop.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady and members.
Item 8 on our agenda is House Bill 2561. Chairman Terry. Chairman Terry, you have a motion, you have a second, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. This bill contains 2 interstate compacts for healthcare professionals. One is for occupational therapists, the other is for the audiologist and speech language pathologist. It's similar, these compacts are similar to other compacts we have for health professionals. This bill is budget neutral, has a $10,000 increase in state expenditures and $10,000 increase in state revenue.
Thank you, Chairman Zachary. I believe you have a question for the sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sponsor, just a quick question. I've read through the bill, but I just want to get it on the record. There have been many conversations in the Commerce Committee recently about interstate compacts. Can you just confirm this does not create any type of unelected board?
Chairman Terry.
Define, I think you're talking about the bill that was the 3-state compact from that. There is a commission that is set up that would oversee the different compacts that's different than the board that you're talking about.
Chairman Zachary.
Correct, Madam Chair. Thank you, sponsor. Yeah, just to confirm that this doesn't create any kind of unelected board that sets rules and regulations that overrides local decision-making.
Chairman Terry.
Thank you. There's a commission that's in here that would set up rules for the compact, but not, I don't think what you're getting at is another bill that's there, but it's not like that.
Correct.
At all.
Yeah, just want to make sure I want to get that on record. Thank you.
Are there other comments? I do believe, Chairman Terry, as you pointed out, we have these it's basically a reciprocal agreement.
Correct.
for various professions, primarily within the medical community. So not unlike things that we have done in the past.
That's correct.
All right. I see no other hands up. So without objection, we're voting on House Bill 2561. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 2561 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
Thank you. Item number 9, House Bill 2185 by the very patient Representative Travis, who's been waiting for some time. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 2185, it removes the provision in code that prevents a driver from being placed on another pay plan for reinstatement fees should they default on the original plan.
You've heard the sponsor's explanation. Questions? Seeing none. Without objection, we're voting on House Bill 2185. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 2185 moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee.
Item number 10, House Bill 2614 by our own Chairman Faison. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank
Have a
you, Madam
motion and a
Chair.
second.
Committee, this is a continuation of a TIF that my county has, just moving the date for a couple more years.
Are there questions? Comments? Question has been called on the bill. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those who would like to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk. The ayes do have it. House Bill 2614 moves on to calendar and rules. That completes our regular calendar for today. We're going to continue on now with budget hearings. First up, we'll be hearing from the Department of Commerce and Insurance. We appreciate your patience as you sat through our scintillating deliberations. We're glad to have you with us. We are out of session. Members, the documents that you'll be seeing on the screen are available on your dashboard. And with that, Commissioner Lawrence, we'll just invite you to begin your discussion.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with all of y'all. And I will go ahead and just get it out of the way. While we do regulate a lot, we do not regulate cat hair cookies. I'm sorry. That was a bad
Perhaps you
joke.
should.
Ooh, I'm not going to touch that. Not touching that. I do have with me most of the Commerce Insurance leadership team. Our assistant commissioners are in the audience. I know that most of them are well known to y'all. I will point out I've got up here at the front with me Assistant Commissioner Paul Hartbarger, Deputy Commissioner Jennifer Peck, and then on my other side, Deputy Commissioner Toby Compton. So again, thanks so much for the opportunity to present our budget. Unlike last year where you had to cut me off, I listened to the directions this time and will be brief, I promise.
Thank you so much.
So like I said, we do have a very diverse range of regulatory functions that we're tasked with, which includes overseeing insurance and securities, managing the State Fire Marshal's Office, overseeing some 25 programs that represent 40 professions and nearly 300,000 Tennesseans. Additionally, the department is responsible for the Fire Service and Codes Enforcement Academy, Firefighter Commission, Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy, Peace Officers Standards Training Commission, the Division of TennCare Oversight, and the administratively attached Tennessee Emergency Communications Board. So again, our short presentation will focus primarily on the increases to our budget. And of course, at the end, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. All right, turning to our first slide. As you are aware, over the last several years, the governor and the General Assembly have made impactful investments in Tennessee's firefighters, both career and volunteer. Tennessee has over 650 fire departments, and over 500 of those are volunteer departments. Only about 50 departments are staffed solely by career firefighters, so you can tell the importance of volunteer firefighters in the volunteer state. And as you can see from this slide, the governor is proposing making 7 additional investments to support the Tennessee Fire Service. The first 2 are the Tennessee Fire and Codes Academy, located in beautiful Bell Buckle, Tennessee, The next 3 will provide staff positions to our efforts to support local departments. And the final 2 are increases to the educational incentive pay programs for both career and volunteer firefighters. All right, turning to our next slide. Moving to our efforts to support Tennessee law enforcement, Governor Lee's bold, responsible proposals are truly transformational, and they will help grow, protect, and train the next generation of Tennessee law enforcement officers. The governor's proposal establishes a comprehensive law enforcement hiring, training, and recruitment program to expand our police officer pipeline and meet financial constraints head-on, both for local agencies and for law enforcement officers themselves. The governor and the department are committed to recruit and retain the best and brightest in law enforcement in our state. So first, the governor is proposing a non-recurring appropriation of $30 million to establish law enforcement officer recruitment bonuses. 9, and next, the governor is proposing a non-recurring appropriation of $24 million to our Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy to help defray the local cost of sending officers to basic police school. This program is designed to make it more economical for local agencies to recruit and hire new officers. 11, we're excited to be able, with this new funding, to offer transition schools 12 times a year, which is up from our current 3 times a year. And this has been responsive to needs that we've heard in the local community. We're really happy about that. On to our next slide. 2 final cost increases I'd like to mention. As you can see, we're asking for 1 additional position for the securities division to help keep up with growth in the industry, as well as disbursement from the Board of Licensing Contractors, reserve fund for the Go Build Tennessee program, which I think I'd be remiss if I didn't note came from the committee's own Representative Williams, who appears to be engaged. And I apologize, I caught you when you weren't prepared. My apologies. All right, turning to our last slide, I'd like to show you a picture of the department's overall budget. The governor is proposing a base budget request of just over $327 million for the department, which is an increase from last year's request of $260 million. As you've heard, most of this increase is directly related to the non-recurring programs to support the lives and safety of all Tennesseans through investments in the fire service and law enforcement. And at this point, I'll conclude the hopefully very brief presentation and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
We do appreciate your very brief presentation. Your brevity has been mentioned and noted several times, and thank you so much for adhering to that, because we do, I think, have a number of questions, and we want to give members an opportunity to ask those. And we do have access, members, to the questions that were sent to the department. Hopefully you've had a chance to look over those, as well as now you've seen their slides for the presentation here today. First on my list is Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good afternoon. Good to see you and your team. Related to the focus on hiring law enforcement, the governor's commitment to that, there's $1.5 million related to the portal in the budget. Can you speak to any ongoing maintenance or cost, and will law enforcement have to pay any kind of fee to participate in that?
So great question, and there will not be a fee for law enforcement to be able to use it. As far as the ongoing recurring costs, I'm unaware of any, so I will ask Assistant Commissioner Hartbarger to weigh into it. But to give a little more flavor, this is related to, it will be modeled after the Jobs for TN portal, which we are aware has been very successful for labor and trying to locate talent throughout the state. So the goal would be that this would be able for local agencies to use to be able to find talent, both outside the state and for recruiting within as well. And Paul, if you would clarify about the recurring costs, please.
Hi, Paul Hartbarger, Assistant Commissioner with the department, as introduced. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. The recurring cost for this, because the software is primarily written and modeled after software that already exists, there's not going to be a lot of software maintenance costs directly associated with it. Will be minimal, but there will be the hosting service, which is roughly $600 a month. It would be an ongoing recurring cost associated with it.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner, one more question, and this probably will be one of the more important questions you're asked today. What are your predictions for our basketball Vols in the upcoming tournament?
Thank you so much for the question. I have filled out 3 brackets so far, and the Vols win all of them.
Outstanding. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Go Vols.
Representative Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to focus on the volunteer firefighter stipends that were created. in the budget, we included 3.8 million in recurring funding for your department to issue the $600 stipends for certain volunteer firefighters in Tennessee when they complete their annual in-service training. Can you provide us an update on that initiative? And also, do you know how many stipends were issued last year?
Absolutely. So I will ask Deputy Commissioner Peck to give a little bit more information, but I will say we are really happy about this effort. Thankful for partners in the General Assembly. We are in process of going to all counties to visit volunteer fire departments and make sure that the volunteer firefighters know about this opportunity. As a reminder, the effort here is to continue to professionalize the volunteer fire service, not only so that they are better protected, but also so that they're better protecting the lives and property of the citizens that they serve. At this point, if it's okay, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Peck to give a little bit more information responsive to your question.
Thank you. Jennifer Peck, Chief of Staff and COO, Department of Commerce and Insurance. Thank you for the question. This is something that we're really proud of, and we are so thankful to you all for passing this historic legislation so that these volunteer firefighters do have access to the $600 each year. So it just closed March 1st, and so we haven't tallied all of it, but we are expecting about 6,400 or so that are going to take part in that, which is an incredible amount. And so that's why, because we are getting the word out, because again, as Commissioner noted, we're going to all 95 counties to speak with volunteer fire departments. We'll be, I'll have to ask my Assistant Commissioner where we'll be on Friday, but we're going to get the word out more. So we are asking for an increase because we anticipate that more of our volunteer firefighters are going to take part in this.
And were there any issues encountered with this? And if so, how were they resolved in terms of the implementation?
Yes. So to be frank, there were some issues related to the implementation, which we were able to work through by talking with stakeholders, by hearing from chiefs, from firefighters. And in the end, I think that what we came up with was a good solution to make this really accessible for those volunteer firefighters while accomplishing the aim of the legislation, which, as I mentioned earlier, was about professionalizing so that their lives are better protected and they're better able to protect the lives and property of their fellow Tennesseans. So in the end, I feel really good about the solution that we've come up with. And as Deputy Commissioner Peck mentioned, I think the numbers speak for themselves from the number of volunteer firefighters that are availing themselves of this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just a follow up on that for Deputy Peck, what sort of percentage have we reached, of the volunteer firefighters in Tennessee? I know it's an ongoing process, but how deep are we into that group?
Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, how many have filed as having taken advantage of the EIP?
Yes, and then if you know how many volunteer firefighters we have in the state, so how close are we to completing training? And I know we'll never complete it because you have new firefighters coming online, but
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we have about 11,300 volunteer firefighters in the state, which comprises 58% of the firefighters. And just as a side note, 75% of the departments are volunteer fire departments. And so I believe I'd have to check with Tony Grand or Assistant Commissioner Gary Farley. I think the last number I heard is that we have already gotten about a quarter of those in as taking advantage of the EIP. And then again, I think we're going to continue to get that.
I see a thumbs up from Assistant Commissioner Farley, so you got it right.
So we still have work to do, but we're making good progress.
That's exactly right. And we are more than dedicated to making sure that the training is done at Tafaka and that we are able to get the word out that this is available.
Right. Thank you. Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The questions that I have are concerning the recruitment and the monies that we're going to be using for that for law enforcement. The governor's proposal is to conclude $30 million from non-recurring funds to provide grants for the law enforcement agencies to support bonuses for these new hires and to address the current law enforcement officer shortage. My question is, how will these grants be distributed?
Yeah, thank you. So we are really excited about this money to help get more law enforcement officers in the state of Tennessee. To repeat the analogy that I used over talking with the Senate, we're talking about growing the size of the pie, not just shuffling around the slices. So what we see is, and actually, if I may back up a little bit, because you asked how it will work. We are in the process already of calling together stakeholders, working with the chiefs and the sheriffs. And we also have a law enforcement training advisory council with whom we are meeting in a couple of weeks, in part to talk about this, hoping that this provision of the budget will be approved. And what we would envision is that these bonuses will be available distance based, so that if someone was moving from Olive Branch to Mississippi, they're not getting quite as much as if someone was moving from LA to Kingsport. That said, we would also, while we want to see law enforcement officers from outside the state coming into Tennessee, we'd also like to see folks who are currently not involved in law enforcement in Tennessee get into the profession. So we don't want to exclude Tennesseans from this bonus also, but we don't want to poach from one department to another. So what we would see is using this bonus also as a way to bring people into the profession as a stack on top of some of the other bonuses that already exist for them. So that at the high level, that's what we're hoping to do. We will have a lot of work to make sure that we come up with a process that's going to work best for those for whom it will apply. So to that end, we've already started the conversations, and we'll really beginning it in earnest as soon as hopefully this provision of the budget is approved.
What's your timeline for the rollout? And I'd also like just to take a little bit of time to address the time frame that you have to spend in training. I mean, I'm sure that there's you've got so many that are in training now for whether it's a state trooper or policeman. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. So timing wise, we would like to have all of this set up and ready to go July 1 to be when the funds would be available for us. Now, this is not to any of the information that we've gotten limited. So we will not be trying to spend this $30 million in a year. We hope to come up with a formula that will make this as impactful as possible and give us the best bang for the buck to allow it to be spread out over many years in order to provide a lasting benefit to law enforcement departments across the state. So again, I acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do, but we have good relationships with those stakeholders. We have good internal knowledge as well. And I feel confident that we're going to be able to come up with something that will accomplish the goal of getting more of the best and brightest into Tennessee to protect our homes and communities.
Representative Sexton.
Well, I would imagine that unless it's a trained officer that's coming from out of state, then you're, of course, robbing for Kentucky and Alabama, which I'm okay with that. But otherwise, inside the state, you're looking at recruits or those that are in training already. Am I thinking right on that?
So we would envision that this would be primarily bringing in folks from out of state. Y'all will recall in the governor's state of the state where he introduced the officers who had moved from who were seeking the sweet free air of Tennessee and had moved down here. Yeah. And I would envision that would be most of the people who would be taking advantage of this. But in the early preliminary conversations we've had with stakeholders, they were keen to not see Tennesseans excluded from these dollars. And so that was responsive to what we were hearing from our stakeholders, was why we were contemplating this other component to it about trying to, again, grow the size of the pie, not just reallocating slices and see poaching from one department to another. But to your point, bringing in someone who's well-trained has its advantages. But we also have heard from chiefs who would prefer to see someone come in and they get fully molded under their own department. So there are individual approaches that are going to be specific to a chief, specific to a jurisdiction that we want to be respectful of and come up with rules that are going to work the best for them.
Well, I especially think that it's good that we're doing that too, with how law enforcement's been treated throughout, many cities, that we are not only appreciate our law enforcement, but we're trying to pay them more and give them a good environment to work in. It's hard enough as it is. But the other thing is the areas of the state that are more impacted by the law enforcement shortage. If so, where are those places?
Yeah, so to your question about making sure that these efforts are targeted for both this and also for another one of the provisions that you didn't ask about, but related to the scholarships that the governor has put into the budget to be able to help out for getting folks to go to the basic police school. We are attempting to be as intentional as possible in maximizing the efforts. So we know that there are different areas of the state that have greater needs. We also know that some areas are better equipped to pay those training dollars than are others. So again, proactively, we've reached out to see what resources already exist. And that was how, for example, and I'm not trying to say that this is what we would necessarily use, but we became aware of the Department of Agriculture's ability to pay index. I apologize, I don't recall the specifics, but the point is another agency had already put in a great deal of work to understanding what resources existed within an area and attempting to apply that for other grants. So that would be a piece of what we were trying to do here as we're trying to balance how these dollars are most effectively spent to benefit Tennesseans. We want to be really intentional. We want to be as effective as possible with these dollars. And I hope I answered your question because I realize I'm rambling now and I apologize.
Representative Sexton.
Some of my questions are rambling too, so. One last question. These are non-reoccurring funds, and we have a present shortage of officers. So how are you going to use those funds for the present need? And I mean, other than, we already talked about it some, trying to get trained officers from other areas, but they're probably not going to come to Bean Station, which they might. I don't know. It's pretty good. We got good maters there. So, but just wondering how that you're going to handle that and the obligations that'll come along with it from the local governments.
So to the first part of your question about the when of it is as soon as possible. So hopefully this and all of the other provisions that we talked about would be approved as part of the governor's proposal, and we're able to implement those after that work with the stakeholders that we talked about. I do hope that they go to that it benefits Bean Station. And I hope that every single person in here will see their local community benefited from this. In truth, this is a lot of money, and we're aware of and thankful for the governor's big investment in law enforcement, and sense what a big responsibility and opportunity that we have here. So we again will work expeditiously and judiciously to make sure that this is going to get out and be effective as quickly as possible.
Thank you. One more comment, maybe.
Quickly.
I talk very slow. I just want to comment about the volunteer firefighters. 99% of my 3 counties, which are changing, of course, but they have only volunteer firefighters. And personally, I don't think that we do enough for them. I'm really glad of the little bit of things that we've been doing lately, and they appreciate it greatly. It's not much, but they really appreciate it. And I hope in the future that we could come up with some just a little bit of things that would help them, because they operate on a shoestring budget and they're there day and night, volunteering, not charging anything. So I just wanted to leave that as a comment.
Thank you, Representative Sexton. We move on. Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner and your team, thank you so much. Appreciate that. In the vein of the Law Enforcement Training Academy, you had $600,000 up there to go from 3 classes to monthly classes to 12 classes. Can you give me an idea of how many individuals are participating now in each of the classes, and what's the projection for numbers in the future?
That's a great question. I think the the best answer might be for thinking about as we move fully away from the COVID era, as the last couple of years might be a little biased. If it's okay, I'd like to invite up Director Chip Kane, who is the director of the Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy and the executive secretary of the Post Commission, who I think would be best equipped to answer that question as to the number of folks that we have coming in for our transition classes. So, Director Kane, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, thank you very much. William Kane, Director, Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy. We train approximately 50 officers per transition class.
Great.
Chairman Hawk?
Thank you. Just to follow up, do we see that continuing consistently over 12 months now that we're going from 3 months to 12 months? And what do we do if we start decreasing in numbers? So just give me a ballpark idea what we're expecting in the next 2 years.
You know, we've never done this many, so it's very hard to give a forecast on that. And, you know, we've got this great scholarship program for the Basic Training Academy as well, but we're also recruiting people from out of state. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I don't know how to forecast that. You know, we've only done 2 to 3 a year, so.
Leader Camper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, and your team. In 2021, the Second Look Commission report included an observation that there's an opportunity to provide law enforcement with some additional training with respect to identifying and responding to child abuse. And so they also made a recommendation that Law Enforcement Academy, Post, and DCS work together in trying to develop ways and to instruct law enforcement on how to detect child abuse. So my question is, does training already exist within the academy to help? I'm seeing some up and downs, okay, in helping to spot child abuse?
Apologize, I turned that off. Yes, ma'am. We do currently have training, and there's also continued training that happens yearly. There is, as I understand, a bill that would require not only child abuse, but also child sexual abuse to be a component of that ongoing training. Again, I will turn it over to Director Kane, as I believe he's engaging with that daily in a way that I'm not and would be better prepared to respond to that question.
Certainly. Currently, we do train on child abuse in the basic training program. And also on an annual basis, child sexual abuse has been required. Just in my law enforcement experience, every time that we cover child sexual abuse, typically child abuse is covered. The bill that's out there now would mandate that child abuse also be a required component in addition to child sexual abuse. So probably be able to cover both of those in the same course.
Leader Camper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To what degree is DCS involved with this training, or is there an opportunity for them to give you all, come in and assist to help to formulate what the training would be? Is there a relationship there?
As a result of conversations we've had working on the current bill that's making its way through the legislature, I believe we are going to pick up and have a better partnership with DCS. I know they've got a training facility that's got basically a simulator for their caseworkers, and we're going to actually take a look at that and see if that's not something that we could perhaps expose our basic recruits to as well.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Todd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the proposed budget, I think there's $485,000 earmarked for recurring items for maintenance at the, I think this is at the Tennessee Fire Codes Enforcement Academy. So the question is, what exact maintenance items would this cover, if you have any details on that? And then also, and I know it's recurring, so what amount of additional funding would it take that might lower that cost? Is there a one-time cost that could be covered that will lower that maintenance cost?
So that's a phenomenal question. And the second part of your question is actually closer to what we are doing. Tafaka is about a 20-year-old set of buildings campus on about 335 acres. And it's a phenomenal place, and great work is done there. But it is starting to show its age because we've been on closer to a break fix model. And this $485,000 will allow us to move away from break fix into true preventative maintenance. And it will also allow us to no longer have to divert some monies that should have gone to training into fixing a gas valve in the burn building, for example. So this 485 is going to allow us to get out in front of those monies. What we had envisioned is that this would not be in perpetuity, the 485,000, but 3 years was what we had spoken with the governor's office about our needs as to what we think would set the academy up for its next 20 years of success and move away from that break fix model.
Chairman Williams.
Commissioner, sorry I missed your joke earlier. It wasn't a joke, but apologize. Leader Lambert had to go back to his family, and he had to tell me something right then. But anyways, great to see you again, and you're correct. We did work real hard on Go Build in 2015. If the members may not know, in 2015, the ratepayers, or the Board of Licensing Contractors, asked to move some of their fund balance to start a nonprofit in order to facilitate our young ones to get involved in construction jobs across the state. It was something we'd seen done in other states, and so I noticed that this year that there was included, I think it was 250, an additional 200 transfer of those ratepayers' excess fees, $250,000 to be transferred back to the Go Build Fund. I guess the question is this something that you heard from the ratepayers or the board? Could you share a little bit about it? And then also an update on Go Build and its effectiveness since it's now been 6 years.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hand it over to Deputy Commissioner Toby Compton. He's got the regulatory boards under his purview and has worked closely with Go Build for a while. So Toby, if you would please.
Sure. Toby Compton, I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Commerce and Insurance, and Representative Williams. Yeah, we've worked together on this program over several years. In its 6th year now. It has suffered a little bit in the last 2 years because we couldn't get into the classrooms, into the high schools, some of the CCATs and whatnot, just because of the pandemic situation. This money is intended to kind of get them back on track and get them a little more across the state with both volunteers, but also working towards a model for self-sufficiency. There's 3 more years. There are 3 years left before sunset with Go Build at the moment. So the plan that we did with in concert with Department of Labor, F&A, and our department was to put something together. And yes, the board blessed it. The reserve fund stands at the end of January, 2.7 million in Go Build. So the $250,000. No general fund appropriations. This is exclusively out of their reserve fund monies.
Okay. I guess I'm pretty passionate about this. I mean, in 2015, the difficulty hiring people in the profession of which I do full-time, well, part-time when I'm here, but full-time, it's dramatic. We have made very little progress in getting folks to do these jobs, of which pay fantastically. In my community, if you can operate a backhoe, you're going to make more than 120% of the average household income of a family in Putnam County. The problem is we can't get people to do those jobs. I think one of the big challenges that I hear, being the co-conspirator or co-author, depending on your purview as it relates to Go Build, is it has not been as effective as we'd hoped it'd been, or how it was touted in other states, particularly Alabama and Florida. There where their programs were there. I do know that their programs were a little bit different, even though they did pay for their initial revenue was different than ours, and that the states put in a large sum of money, and then it was undergirded by investment by not just the ratepayers through their funds, but also by private industry that contributed to this nonprofit, of which they hope to get some of these employees. I guess my question is I know in the Senate side of the House, there's much more frustration or disdain with this, because as one of my favorite chair ladies says, I haven't seen billboards like I used to see them. I haven't seen communication and marketing like I used to see them. And she has a valid point. And so I recognize, we all do, that the period of COVID was difficult on a lot of folks. But I am concerned about a continuation of transfer of the money if we don't see immediate results. And so I guess the question is, have we seen more an increase? Maybe not in my community, but in those areas where more marketing dollars have been spent, have we seen results that bear out that this is a good investment? Can you share with those, say, in the large metropolitan areas where they afford billboards, maybe?
I would have to go back and look at some notes pre-pandemic to tell you kind of where those dollars went and then the effectiveness. I'm sorry, I really can't speak to that, but we'll follow up with you on that.
Okay.
But the money, yeah, is intended to get us beyond where we were these last 2 years,
Right.
with virtually no funding,
Right.
and an inability to get into areas and back to, op-eds, in county newspapers, social media posts, but also really importantly, those hands-on visits in those classrooms and those job fairs out there across the state.
Yeah, well, we're making significant investment in CTE programs across the state. The governor's vocational education programs are great as well. I think we could do better as it relates to Go Build. I look forward to working with the stakeholders as I have from 2015 to now to see if we can't change the trajectory of this investment. The good news for taxpayers is the monies that we've invested thus far have all been the ratepayers. They've been the board contractors, licensed contractors. They all said, we have a large fund balance. Let's invest those revenues instead of reducing fees on themselves. They've maintained them at the way they did. And so I look forward to getting the data from you. I'm hopeful that it will change. I look forward to seeing the day when people in the 42nd district's children are bringing home baseball cards that have to do with being a pipe fitter or a backhoe operator or something like that, which is what they originally touted it to be. But I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your hard work on this. I do think it's important. That's something we should continue, but only with the understanding that results matter. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. And I know that I am his favorite chair lady. And I do have, just concerns about the effectiveness of the program and whether or not, and maybe I just didn't see social media, but if we're trying to reach kids in classrooms or young adults who are looking at career changes, probably billboards aren't the most effective way to go about that anyway. It's social media and it's other means of communication that they're more likely to avail themselves of. But, and I think we all recognize it's not just the building industry. I met with some folks from Volkswagen today. They had the same recruiting issues. We have workforce issues in the state and in this country. So, and everybody's kind of competing for those, few folks who are unattached at this point. So we recognize that it's an uphill climb, but again, we just want to make sure that the dollars that we allocate are used in an effective way and actually, as the chairman has said, make a difference at the end of the day. Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. And in the essence of time here, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, if it'd be all right, and you can just get back to the Chair Lady the answers, and she can distribute it or bring them to me. Last year, we gave you all $1 million in non-recurring fundings to create the volunteer fire department grants. Were they distributed? Was all that money distributed in competitive and non-competitive grants? You spent all the money?
Those would have been competitively
Okay.
distributed.
All right. And can you give me an example of how that funding was utilized?
Absolutely. I think turnout gear is the best example, replacing old, decrepit, and no longer protective turnout gear with new turnout gear.
The new turnout gear, does that also include air packs or?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. And finally, can you tell me approximately how many fire departments you were able to help with that grant?
So 100, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. So we just closed the grant process for this previous year, and there were 179 applications, and the average award was $16,000. And the significant number here is the amount requested. So the amount of grants we received and the amount of requested funds was $7 million.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, we thank you. Thank you for your brief presentation. As you noted, we had plenty of questions of our own to take up your time, and if we come up with others, then we'll certainly reach out to you. And again, thank you for the brevity and for the work that you do. There's a lot of things under the purview of your department that mean a lot to the state. If your department runs well, then that goes a long way to making sure that our state does. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you think. I think. Next, for our budget hearings this afternoon, we have the TBI, and we're going to ask Director Roush to come forward with whomever he chooses to bring to the tables with him. Welcome. Thank you for being here, and we're trying to move efficiently through today's event. So thank you for being ready to start just a couple minutes early. Let us maybe get a few minutes of our lives back. So
thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you to the committee for allowing us to be here before you. With me here at the table is, to my right, is my Deputy Director, Brad Nealon, and our Director over our fiscal unit, Brian Senecal. And so we will move right through it and be open to any questions you might have, and maybe give you back even more of your afternoon, if at all possible.
And I would point out to members that once we complete the budget hearing, the TBI does have an expansion request, which we'll need to hear as well. So we actually have two pieces of business to do with Director Roush today. So thank you. Please proceed.
Absolutely. So as you'll see there with our presentation, this was our request for cost increase that we have put forward. These are the increases that the administration had approved and put in the budget. And so on the first line is our special crime division positions, 20 positions. And I'll get into detail on what those positions will be as we go forward. Then we have our forensic services unit, 25 positions. 20 of those are forensic scientists, 5 forensic techs. Next on the list is the administrative support staff positions, 5 of those positions. And then physical security enhancement includes 3 positions, and those are uniform officers that'll be working at our facilities in each of the regions. Next on the list is our cyber investigation program support. And we'll talk about cyber investigations again as we go forward. And then the large number there is on training, equipment, modernization, and replacement. And this is one-time monies that we've requested to address a number of equipment needs as we move forward. And then AFIS, the automated fingerprint identification system line charges. These are charges that we in the past have been paid by court fees. And because of the pandemic where the courts were shut down, those fees were reduced dramatically, and the funds were not there. And so the request was to make it whole, so we do not have to charge local government in order to submit fingerprints in the system. Next is digital evidence capacity. Because of the digital world we live in, the need for more capacity to store that evidence is very robust. And then last on our list on the cost increase request is the Jackson Laboratory that we just opened this past year. And we did not know what the rent was going to cost us, and so we had to wait until that number was provided. And so that is that number that you see on that cost increase slide.
We would have expected Representative Shaw and Chairman Todd to get us a deal on that building. So it's a bit disappointing. Go ahead.
So as I mentioned, the Special Crimes Initiative. So it's 20 new agents in 3 critical areas that we have addressed and identified: cybercrime, human trafficking, and violent crime and drugs. Under cybercrime, one of the things that we wanted to point out is over 9,000 victims and over 140 million in losses were experienced in 2021 due to cybercrime. Currently, we have 1 agent working cybercrime dedicated in the Bureau. And so the opportunity for this is we will be standing up a cyber investigative unit with 10 of these 20 positions. And so that will give us the capability to address the cyber issues that are going on, which obviously is the emerging challenge throughout not only Tennessee, but throughout our country. And so we will be able to assist in those investigations, do those investigations, and provide personnel to address those challenges. Next on the list is human trafficking. Human trafficking continues to be a growing issue in Tennessee. We have in the past, we were given the opportunity to address human trafficking. We have 5 positions currently to address human trafficking at the Bureau. 4 of those positions work in the different regions, and 1 is a supervisor. And so the TBI is often praised nationally for our efforts and the ongoing efforts on human trafficking. Our unit maximizes those resources that we have and the efforts. We work closely with local departments to address human trafficking. When I came into the Bureau, again, part of the assessment I've been doing for the past 4 years is determining where our needs are and where the issues are in the Bureau. And one of the things I noticed with human trafficking is what we needed was to work more at training. I call it teaching others to fish. And so working with our local agencies, teaching them how to do human trafficking investigations and operations, where in the past we would bring agents from throughout the state to come in and conduct those operations by ourselves. What we do now is we have task forces, we have officers from local jurisdictions. We teach them how to do these operations so that when we are finished with the operation, they can continue to run those in their jurisdiction after they've seen how they are run. We have, so this is going to give us the opportunity to enhance and increase those efforts. We're assigning 5 of these 20 positions to human trafficking, so we'll double the size of this unit. And last on the list is violent crime. I don't need to tell this group much about violent crime. You know the increases that we have seen in violent crime throughout our state. And so one of the things we know is that violent crime is driven by drug crime. And so what we see here is our opportunity is to address that further, the drug issues that we are experiencing throughout our state. What we know right now is the 3 number 1 drugs, or the 3 top drugs that we're seeing come into our crime labs. At the top is methamphetamine. Second is synthetic marijuana, and third is fentanyl. Those 3 drugs are all man-made. They're no longer agriculturally grown. They're made in labs, and they are very powerful and very dangerous, and they are killing Tennesseans. And so the effort that we are putting in is to address these issues by adding 4 agents to our drug unit to be able to address these, continue to address these issues. Each of those will be assigned task forces to multiply the opportunity to have an impact. In addition to that, we have 1 position of these and that we listed under violent crime, and it'll be a pilot. We have found that our air asset has been highly effective in addressing violence and violent crime, not only in serving as support for our local law enforcement on operations dealing with gangs and violent crime, things like robberies and auto theft and carjackings, but they also assist in locating and bringing law enforcement into fugitives. And so that is a huge area that we also saw an opportunity for increase. Next on the list is forensic services, and I have been asked by this body a number of times about how we can improve our efforts and turnarounds times with our crime lab results. And so as we have looked at it, one of the things that we've seen immediately was the impact of the efficiency of the scientists that we have and the work that they do. And so this past year, we received an award called the Maximus Award. And what that basically says is that our folks are working at the maximum capacity to impact and turn evidence around with the numbers of people that we have. 98.3% of all of our requests are performed on non-TBI cases. Obviously, they're all coming in from local and other state agencies to the lab. Our average turnaround times have grown substantially from 2011 to 2012, and from that time period to 2019, 2020. And so what we're trying to do is our best efforts at reducing those times, and there are a number of initiatives that we put in place to do that. Unfortunately, the only solution is adding personnel to address that. And so in this, we're addressing the greatest needs. We'll be assigning the vast majority of these positions to forensic biology, dealing with DNA, and forensic chemistry, dealing with the drugs that continue to come in. And then there are 4 forensic tech positions. Difference between a forensic scientist and a forensic tech is the forensic scientist is the one who actually will work the evidence and testify. They'll write the reports, they'll testify to the results. Forensic tech basically is a person that will assist them in setting up the evidence, putting the evidence into a system in order for it to be analyzed. But all of the work is done in terms of the analysis and testimony by our scientist. And then also in that is an administrative position. Move on to the one-time training and equipment ask. We've asked for a significant one-time investment to help us replace, modernize our ongoing equipment and technology across all of our divisions. Included in this is equipment to provide improvements to our data center, the infrastructure, and our network security. It is critical, especially again with the attempts by those actors in the cyber world attempting to tap into infrastructure and security. Our network, we are obviously a bit different than the rest of the state in that we manage our own and we house our own data. Because of the sensitive nature of our data. So we have our own system that has to be protected separate from that of the entire state. In this as well is physical security improvements to our facilities. There are a number of improvements up to and including the physical structure securities as well as key cards and those types of things. Communication equipment, including radios for all of our TBI agents. One of the things I saw when I got in the door was not all agents have radios. What they would have to do is sign radios out for operations, and that's just not acceptable, and it's not efficient for the operations. They should have a radio available at all times so that they can respond and report from home. Next is needed investigative equipment across all of our divisions. There are a number of areas where equipment is necessary for us to be able to be impactful and effective with the work that we do. We have a computer lab and training room that we're renovating. The great news is it has, the way it is now, it's not manageable for training. And so it has, the way the room is set up is not manageable. What this will do is give us the opportunity to redo that room so that it'll be more robust for us to use for various training scenarios, but also be able to use it for our computer level training. Crime lab equipment and crime scene trucks are in this as well. So each of our each of our labs will receive a new crime scene truck. So one in each of our divisions. And then our aviation unit, the equipment upgrades will be absolutely necessary and important, as the equipment is several years old now, and the upgrades are critical for us to continue to be impactful and effective. Some of the one-time training initiatives, cyber training, crime scene technology training, forensics, digital evidence training, as well as intensive pilot training is included in the training request. That handles and takes care of the presentation in terms of the ask and the request that we have put forward. And I will yield back to the chair and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roush. There's a lot going on, and we have opportunities with this budget to take care of some things that hopefully will help you and be more effective, you and your organization in the future. So thanks for being forward-looking and determining what those things might be. Chairman Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Director Roush, you've given us some information about the APHIS system, but the state provided, I think, a $4 million grant last year to upgrade that system. Can you just give us a quick update on the upgrades?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, we are actively working on the upgrades at this time. So the contract has been signed and the work is now moving forward. And so that $4 million that we have leveraged from the state, we have $6 million from the federal government to completely revamp our APHIS system. And so what it'll do is it'll bring it to the 21st century finally, for us to be able to have a system that is robust and that frankly will match and meet the needs of our agency in Tennesseans going forward. But it's well on the way. The contract has been signed, and we are moving forward with that upgrade.
Good deal. And then you also mentioned that with courts not being held while we were in the pandemic, we weren't getting court fees, and so this upcoming budget has around $500,000 in recurring fees, I guess, to make up that gap. Do you anticipate a continuing decrease in those fees, or is this recurring funding for something else?
No, so the financing for that came through the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. That was cut, and those fees have been assigned, as I understand, for other purposes. And so that's a big part of the problem, is because of the reduction in those fees, that money has been redirected under OCJP. And so what this does is it assures us that we have the money that we won't have to take from OCJP to take care of our partners throughout the state.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Director, thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate the great job you all do. The special crimes positions, the 20 that the governor funded, $4 million in the budget, 2.7 million recurring, 1.4 million. You gave us the breakdown of the agents, 10, 5, 4, and 1, as far as where they're assigned. But with that, can you speak directly of the caseloads and what you perceive in the future as being what areas you perceive the crime increasing the most? Or can you kind of look into the future and tell us what you see on the horizon?
Thank you, Representative. Yes. So what I would point out to you is in the questionnaire that we responded, you'll see in our ask, the numbers were larger in terms of the number of positions that we've asked for. Yes, we do expect that the numbers, the work is certainly much larger than what we have personnel to be able to address, and going forward, it's going to be that way. What I hope is that this is the first half of filling out the rest of the ask, and that is kind of the way the conversation has been. Is this is a start of being able to meet the needs of the Bureau. This was a very big ask that we put forward to the governor's office. We know that, but I was asked when I walked in the door 4 years ago to take a comprehensive review of the agency and determine where one can improve, but also what our needs were. And that's something that I've been doing since I got in the Bureau. This is representative of that complete review that we've done. And so the positions that we asked for while we didn't get all of them, this is a great start. And so I'll be back. There are more needs, and those needs will address all of the issues that you just mentioned there. And so specifically, like for cyber, we had asked for 15 positions. So we're going to put 10 of these 20 in that because that's our most pressing need at this point. Those other 5 positions will be needed in order for us to be able to address what we know is happening in this realm of criminal activity. And so those other positions be needed. In addition, the other positions for human trafficking, other positions, I think there was 10 more in the human trafficking that we had asked for. There were, I think, another 10 in violent crime that we asked for. So there are more positions that are needed to address what we know is the workload that we're trying to address.
Representative Ogles, you have a follow-up?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Director. And that was a very good explanation. I appreciate that. Pivoting to the College and University Security Act, we call it the Crime Campus Report that members of the General Assembly get every year. I read the explanation. I know you sign that every year, and your agency compiles that. And I appreciate the great job y'all are doing with that. My question is under this act, I'm a little confused on the information that's provided to the General Assembly that you compile. Who has oversight to verify that the information provided to you is factual, and what recourse is there is my question. Thank you, sir.
Certainly, Representative. So let me start with the way the information is reported. So the information is collected and reported by the institutions. They're responsible for providing the data to us. So what we put in our report is based off the data that we receive. That's step one. Now, some of this comes from law enforcement. If a campus has law enforcement, they'll collect that and they'll submit it to us. And some of the other comes from those non-enforcement campuses. And what they'll do is generally that information is collected by local law enforcement. It'll be reported in their normal numbers, and then it'll be compiled into the report based on that. There should be workings between the university and that local law enforcement. They're required to ask the local law enforcement what the numbers are, and so that should be happening. And then the verification process is we can audit. So we can audit the numbers and go and check and determine, are they reporting what they're supposed to report and in the manner they're supposed to report. The challenge still becomes it's going to be based on what they have in their record that we can see. And so it's not a perfect system, but there obviously, when you look at the overall numbers, there are challenges that, when you look and you see some of the numbers I've looked at, it makes you ask questions as to, are we getting the full picture? And so, yeah, I hear your concerns. We have those same kind of concerns, and we have to rely on our partners to be straightforward and honest in their reporting. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm just wondering if maybe there's a better way of doing it.
One last follow-up, Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that explanation. I just, with looking at that data, there were several, I would say, questions I had. It seems like some of the universities, some of the people submitting data are doing a very thorough, good job. But there are definitely some institutions that I question their record keeping and the information that has been provided to you. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the great job y'all do as well.
Thank you.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Director, thank you again for being here, you and your staff. I'm going to go back just for a second on positions, and I want to back up before we move forward. Last year, if I remember correctly, you received $4.4 million for 20 additional agents. What's the status of those agents? Have they all been hired?
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, they start on the 28th of this month. So we have been in our hiring process, and the academy starts the 28th. There'll be 23 agents in that course.
Okay. So now let's move on to this budget. So there's a total of 53 new positions. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
So how many current vacant positions are there?
I have that number this morning, actually. Yeah, I know what it is. 15. And so, and that's with the positions that we're filling, these 23. And so we had 38 when I got the report this morning. I know 23 of those are filled with coming. Well, actually, there's a few more of those because there's some administrative positions, but we have people in the process to being hired in those positions. But there's 15 vacant right now. And there are a number of, they're not just agent positions. There's included in that or other support positions.
So, and you may kind of answer that, my next question with what you just said. Could any of these vacant positions be repurposed to help fill in for the needed 53?
Unfortunately, no. These are all of those positions are needed positions. They're just vacant. Most of them for a very short time of folks who have moved on, who have left the Bureau most recently.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
And I'll just follow up with a question somewhat related to Chairman Hicks' line of questioning, particularly on the cybersecurity, the new folks. What level of difficulty are you finding to hire those people? Because tech people are a hot ticket. I don't know what the salary range is at the state. I don't know whether that is competitive. So how confident are you that we'll be able to fill those positions with competent people?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will tell you, it's going to be challenging. I will, just be flat honest. Our pay structure needs to be improved. That was one of the requests that we have put in. We're hoping that it gets some eyes on it for next time around. But we did find in this hiring of agents that we had a few of our folks that we had thought we were going to be able to bring on about 7 positions. Out of those 7, I think 5 of them turned it down because of pay. And so that's a challenge. However, we're still confident. There, again, we got 23 people to take the pay that we have right now. I think they're also encouraged by the fact that we are working toward improving that, and I'm confident that we can get there.
And does that confidence include the cybersecurity positions as well?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, good to see you and your team. Before I actually get to my comments and questions, just want to say thank you to Patrick and Rachel. They came and spoke to a group of 8th graders last week, and the 8th graders were super engaged, blown away. And then Patrick went around handing out some goodie that they loved. I never actually saw what it was, but they did an awesome job engaging with those guys, and it created a lot of interest for the criminal justice program they have at CCS. So I appreciate those guys. Question related to fentanyl. So this morning, I actually have the article pulled up here. I happened to read an article about what's going on right now with spring break in Florida. Just in the last couple of days, Fort Lauderdale, 10 hospitalizations for fentanyl. 4 U.S. military cadets OD'd on cocaine that was laced with fentanyl. Florida put out their numbers. They had 5,300 deaths last year because of fentanyl. It was the number one cause of death for drugs in their state, and the list goes on and on and on. So is it accurate to say that the vast majority of fentanyl comes across the southern border?
That is completely accurate. Yes, sir, Representative. It is. So I just made a trip down to the border a couple of weeks ago with the Appalachia High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas. I serve on their executive board. We went down to see the border and see what was going on there. And I can tell you it's challenging. I applaud Border Patrol for the efforts that they're putting in, but they're way down in personnel. There are large portions of the border that are absolutely uncovered, which means free passage across, and that means the influx of what we're seeing. So the vast majority, all fentanyl, all methamphetamine that we're seeing at this time is coming from our southern border. So it's coming across, and it is deadly. It's the most potent that we have ever seen being made in labs south of the border. And so there are, it is a major issue. We are seeing Tennesseans die in record numbers because of this. What they're doing, what they used to do is mix fentanyl in with other drugs. What we're seeing now is they're not even doing that anymore. What they're doing is just bringing pure fentanyl in. They're pressing it into counterfeit pills to make them look like things like oxycodone, oxycontin, hydrocodone, aprazolam. They're pressing it into these pills and making people believe that it's something else. For the most part, I think, frankly, my opinion is that they're pressing it into the pills to try to throw law enforcement off. I think the people who are buying these drugs know what they're getting. They're wanting it because of the impact it has. We know through intercepts that when the drug kills someone, it becomes more popular. I know that's counterintuitive, but it happens. People start seeking it from that dealer. That dealer pushes the information out on their dark social media web that it's a killer, and people want it. They start seeking it. And so that's concerning to us as well, because I think what happens is these folks who are stuck in this crisis of addiction believe that it's not going to kill them. And, and they want the high that comes from this really potent drug. And so it's the worst we've seen. It's in numbers that we have never seen before. The volume is unbelievable. The prices are low. While we're all paying more at the pump and paying more in our grocery stores, they're paying less on the street for drugs. And because of the volume that is coming across. And the other part I would tell you is what I learned in a couple of ways. One is because of cases we've been doing here in Tennessee is the cartels have come across the border. They are here. They are here in rural Tennessee. They are setting up shop, and they are no longer relying on local gangs to sell their wares. They have set up their own distribution network, and we are catching them. But they're here. They are in our communities. We just had a case over in the Knoxville area where we took down an individual who was a nephew to the number 2 in the New Jalisco cartel. That high level of an operative being in states is unprecedented. And so we are in a time of challenge, and with those drugs comes the violence as well, Representative. That's the other thing we're finding. Our focus. I've talked to our team about the focus of what we do. It seems, unfortunately, that the volume of drugs and the amount of money that's taken off of these dealers is falling on deaf ears. And so what we started tracking is the violence that is attached to the individuals that we are taking down, and it is unbelievable. The charges that these individuals have been able to not face: murders, attempted murders, aggravated assaults, robberies, and the way we're getting them is on drug catches. We're catching them with the drugs, and we're able to charge them on those where we may not be able to charge them on the more heinous crime, but we're able to charge them on the drug crime. And so, and then the narrative there, I think, is important because we keep hearing this nonviolent drug offender narrative, and in our world, we don't. That doesn't exist. We're not going after the addict. We're going after the dealers and these DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, and they are violent. There's nothing nonviolent about them.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you. So, Director, what I hearing you say is that an unsecure border is leading to this scourge and this evil that we see not only in Tennessee but across the nation. Is that a fair assessment?
That's very accurate. And as a matter of fact, at the end of this month, I'll be at a conference down in Tallahassee with my peers. All southern states are meeting down there at a meeting called by the director of the Florida Division of Law Enforcement. He's called a meeting of all of the directors of state investigative agencies as well as our teams to determine if we can come up with a strategy for southern states to address the scourge.
And that's my last follow-up question, Madam Chair, is so we have a completely unsecure border that is that lays at the feet of Congress and the president and both parties. There's no doubt about it. And so we know what the issue is, but nothing's being done to address it right now. So what do we do, and what do you do as a TBI in Tennessee to basically put a Band-Aid on something where we're not addressing the core, where it continues to flood across and no sign of stopping it? What do we do as Tennessee? What do you do as the TBI to try to blunt the flow and do something with this that continues to grow?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So again, we are working with our state partners and our friends across the southern states to come up with a strategy to build some kind of a guard against what's happening. We continue in the efforts that we have going on in the state. We have a number of task forces that we participate with. We're having an impact on that. Law enforcement's role is to impact the supply. That's our job, is to stop the supply. That's our job, right? The other piece to this is the demand. And the demand is something that has to be addressed as well. And that has to be done through treatment programs. It has to be done through prevention programs. So it's a multifaceted approach. And I would tell you, we're doing everything we can. We're looking, again, more resources certainly will help us impact this supply side. But we've really got to start looking at how do we deal with demand and prevention.
Well, Director, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your team. What a job you have. And so you have our full support. So we're very thankful for you and your team, your leadership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. Thank you again. As you've heard, we appreciate your work. I want to follow up on what Chairman Zachary's been talking about. There are, unfortunately, legal gateway drugs that are in our communities right now. And I want to talk about Delta 8. I want to talk about some of these analogs and these synthetics that we're seeing now. And thankfully, many of us lived through the bath salts issues that we had starting a decade ago. And tell me where we are on policing these analogs. And in my mind, we're creating customers for these fentanyl delivery organizations that you're talking about. So I'm hearing so much from back home. My school resource officers are seeing these products with minors in schools. There's ODs that are going on a weekly basis in small town Tennessee. What are we doing and what can we do to help battle this, Director? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a challenge, right? The game that is played with drugs, the constant movement of a chemical here or a molecule there. Now we had a statute in place, and it's still in place, but that deals with analogs, and that statute addresses if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? However, we have another statute that came after that, and that we understand is impacting the whole issue of Delta 8 and Delta 10 and whatever next number they want to come up with. And that is that it has precluded us from being able to address that completely. Now, our lab has been able to determine with, if it's Delta 8 or if it's Delta 9. They've been able to determine that. The problem is it's not clear on the legality of it at this point. We believe it's illegal because it causes a high, right? It's THC. And so that's where we have a biggest issue with this right now. And so there is a need to clarify that if it's THC, it's THC, right? And you're right, our kids are getting it. Matter of fact, Mike Little, our assistant director over our lab, is here. He showed me a minute ago an example of a case that we've had recently. That deals with some school children who got into their mother's Delta 8 and it's gummy bears, right? These gummies, and they ate them, and all three of the children had to go to the hospital. One was admitted, right? And so because of the impact and the effect, and so that's the issue. These things are out there; they're being sold as okay, but it's THC. And it should be illegal, frankly.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Director. Don't know where to start sometimes, but I think I shared with you where I had to give a mother a ride to the Vanderbilt ER. Her daughter had deceased on fentanyl. May I share with you, my late stepfather was a state investigator, would come up before legislature and testify. I always remember what he told me before he died. He says, best thing to do is support law enforcement and help folks with addiction and get them treatment. As you know, we're having a workforce development problem. My county can't get truck drivers for the convenience centers. Dealing with the expungements, do y'all have I heard you may have a budget request for some additional staff to help with the expungement. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, and so that's part of our expansion request that's coming up after this. But yes, we do. There is a need to enhance and increase our not only expungements, but also on the other side of our house that we're dealing with, and that is with our with the unit that handles backgrounds when folks call in. And so it's an interesting, because they work almost hand in hand. The team that works on expungements as well as the team that does our background investigations. And so, because what happens is when you call in and you want to purchase a firearm and they're doing that background, if they see something in the record, then they have to put you on hold until they're able to clarify that record. That's an investigation they actually have to go and do. And so that takes time. And that can only be done with more personnel. I mean, that's the issue here, right? And so when we come to you with these expansion requests, and when we come to you with these requests for additional personnel in areas like expungements, in areas like our ties and ticks units, these are the needs in order to be able to better serve Tennesseans.
Director, since
yes.
we are going to have a hearing on that,
We'll
just
hold.
delay that. We'll
Thank you,
hold
sir.
that till the appropriate time. We'll finish up the discussion here. Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, thanks so much for being here. Going back to the topic of drugs, got a couple questions, if you mind going back and forth. First of all, I was just curious if y'all had numbers on how much of the illegal drugs or counterfeit drugs in Tennessee are coming here west to east across the river on the I-55 or I-40 bridge. And that's,
Yeah, I don't know that we have, I don't know that I have the specific information about the route in terms of where they're coming. We know that the interstate routes obviously are how everything is traveling and traversing through our state. So the drugs are coming in a couple different ways. One, we have them coming through the interstate routes. The other way is through package and parcels, right? And so they're being mailed and shipped through the United States Postal Service, through United Parcel Service, through FedEx. Now, we have some great operations with all of those organizations, and we are able to intercept a number of those packages and have done a good job of getting some of those out of the way. But the reality is the volume is more robust than the manpower. And so I don't have specific numbers I can give you on what's being transported in terms of your request or question, but I can tell you that we do know that the major routes for drug supplies are coming through our main interstate.
okay, that makes sense. And that leads me to another question. But
Go ahead.
during the shutdown of Interstate 40 bridge, I forget how many months that was, did y'all see any type of decrease statewide or even in the West Tennessee area of overall drug interdiction?
No, I would tell you that we did not. And so here's the thing: is the reality is, you can. It's almost like the whack-a-mole game. you can smack one and then it's going to pop up somewhere else. And so you can squeeze. It's like squeezing a balloon. You can squeeze one spot and it'll pop up another spot. And so I think that's what we see. And we didn't experience a decrease whatsoever in the trade.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Mr. Director. I know we're going to
talk about something else, so I won't bring up this right now, but can you just, and I know time is getting late, but kind of just give us a little bit of an update on what the Jackson facility has meant. I know that, it's a state of the art and y'all have done an excellent job. Could you just kind of tell us a little bit what benefits you've been able to receive so far from it?
Yeah, absolutely, Representative. So it has been a huge benefit to us. One is obviously it's centralized our facilities in the west side of the state, and so our partners are telling us that it has become really efficient for them to be able to drop evidence off. So that's a huge win. Two is our processing time. We're able to do better because of the state of the art equipment that we have, the space we have. We're also going to enhance. So part of this, the forensic scientist in this is we're going to open a CODIS unit there. So a DNA unit will be opened up in that facility, that'll be the first. Right now we're out processing that evidence. And so we'll be able to do it in a more efficient and effective and cost-effective way there at this lab.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director, I just wanted to let you know this. I also let the Department of Health know so that maybe you can all keep a lookout for it. But the Delta 8 that you were just speaking about, at where I work, there was a mother whose her daughter's boyfriend, and she had been using Delta 8 quite a bit. And one weekend, the young man just started acting very strange. It carried to the next Friday, and they called his parents. They're in another state. These are college-age kids. The parents came from the other state. Anyway, he was taken in for mental health issues, and he was admitted. And the doctor told his parents that he was diagnosing him with schizophrenia. He had never had problems before. They did determine that he was a user of Delta 8. And the doctor at this particular hospital, and I can get you the name of it, said that they're seeing increasing numbers of young people being diagnosed with schizophrenia who use Delta 8. And we know that marijuana can also cause schizophrenia in young people. But I just wanted to let you know that, because you'll drive around town and you'll see Delta 8 signs right up in the store windows or out by the street even. And that's a tremendous concern. And I don't know if, we as Tennessee, if that's just anecdotal, or maybe it is evidence that maybe we need to have some public service announcements or something, because schizophrenia is one of the worst diseases a young person could ever have. It's lifelong, and they will not be able to work, most likely, not be able to care for themselves, nor ever have a family. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I agree with your assessment. It's a concern of ours. Research shows that there are major psychological issues with persistent and continued use of marijuana and its derivatives. And so and especially these synthetics that are out there. And so, Delta 8 is a synthetic. It's a derivative that's been pulled off of the plant. And so it has the ingredient that is most concerning to all of us, and that's the THC content. And that's the reason that we continue to try to educate on this issue.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, Director, and your team for all the work that you do. And I appreciate when you mention supply and demand. I thought supply and demand, at the end of the day, it seemed as if as a country and certainly a state, we have a demand problem when it comes to legal and illegal drugs. It's almost like infection that we have. And until we can monitor the demand, that supply is going to always be there. But my question of the 53 new positions. How many of those positions are bilingual?
Yeah, so one of our pushes is to constantly look for individuals that have language skills. We actually we're able to give a bump and pay with language skills, and so that's one of the areas that we are constantly trying to recruit for is enhancing and increasing our ability to bring on individuals that have multiple language skills.
Sounds great. And what's the total number of employees?
So
Department?
this will put us with this request, it'll put us at 710.
Pretty diverse department.
It's very diverse, yes, sir. We continue to push the diversity as we continue to hire.
Okay. Thank you, Madam
Yes.
Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I would be remiss before we close out this session, something that this body has been interested in and asked questions about ever since I've been here. So I don't want to break our chain, but we've had, as everyone knows, we've had a backlog of for testing. I'm assuming that these new positions with the forensic scientists and the forensic techs are going to help to address that. But can you just tell us what the backlog is like? How long until you anticipate with these folks that are coming on board? How long until we might be current?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chairman, so first of all, to explain, backlogs are not uncommon in any lab. Every lab has a turnaround time that it takes to process evidence. We aren't satisfied with our turnaround times. We continue to look to see how much more efficient we can become. We look for ways to do that with technology. We look for ways to do that in process. We actually, one of the things we do is with our district attorney generals is we're constantly every week sending them a list of evidence that we have in the queue and ask them if they still need that evidence tested, because we find a lot of times that they've already adjudicated a case and they don't tell us. And so we're still holding evidence or getting ready to test some evidence, and they no longer need it. And so they're being really good at working with us to say, no, we no longer need that, or yes, we still need that to be processed. And so that's helping us to reduce the times. They're still at a level that I'm not pleased with. And depending on the science, right? So we have 8 different areas of science that we test in. And so depending on the science, some are doing very well in their quick turnarounds because of the low level of evidence that comes into them, and then the high efficiencies that they have. But some of our more challenging areas, DNA is an area that obviously is more challenging. The drug chemistry is an area that's more challenging. Those are areas that this is going to address, this request. Our request was for 40 scientists and 10 techs. And so we're getting 20 scientists out of on this budget if the body approves. And so that will get us in the right direction and start moving. What we're doing as well is anticipation of the approval. Normally, we have to wait until July for the budget monies to be available to start the hire. The problem is when you're looking for forensic scientists, if you wait till July, you're way behind the curve. What we get is these folks when they come right out of college. That's who we go after. One, again, because of the pay. And so the other is because it's someone that we're able to work with and really get them up to where they need to be skill-wise. And so, and they're fresh out of the chemistry courses, and so that's still fresh in their mind. And so we go after them. They graduate in May, and we're having to wait till July to even talk to them. So now what we're going to do with this one actually is we're going to start the process in May. So we're going to start our hiring process for forensic scientists in May so that we can catch them as they're getting their degree, walk across the stage, and we can hand them an application and get them into the bureau. It'll take, depending on the science, most of the sciences take about 2 years to train them up completely, but they're going to be working during that training period. So they'll be able to have an impact on the evidence. But the long answer to the question is this is going to have an impact. We expect that we'll see the impact in about a year to 2 years from the personnel being brought on.
Thank you. And if you could just not right now because we're so short on time, but if you could just provide us kind of a summary of the timelines on those various sciences.
Sure.
And, obviously we have a specific interest in having in the rape cases. So
Sure.
the DNA issue. So if you could provide that to me, then I'll get it to the other members. And now, Director, we will move to your expansion request. And again, in the interest of time, would ask you to just briefly summarize what that request might be, and we'll open for questions.
Certainly, Madam Chair. So the request is for 8 positions. And the funding for those positions we have is that those are funds that we already have available. We expect those funds to, as a matter of fact, we conservatively looked at those. And these are funds that come in through our fee program. So we have the funds to be able to pay for the positions. These positions, again, will be utilized in our background, our unit that does the backgrounds. We have seen a major increase on sales of firearms. Obviously, they went way up during the pandemic. We saw a bit of a decrease in them, but we have seen another increase, and this increase is sustaining. And when frankly, when the war in Ukraine started, we've seen an increase in firearms purchases, and it's at about 30% right now with the increase in firearms being purchased. Our TICS unit as well has updated over 19,000 criminal histories. And what that means, again, when I mentioned the investigation that has to go into when someone requests to purchase a firearm, if there's if there's a flag, then they have to actually go into the criminal history and determine what's going on to determine why there's not a disposition. Generally, that's the case. Is there's a disposition that hasn't been reported. They have to actually go in and do the investigation, contact the jurisdiction, and determine if there is a disposition on that case. And so we've conducted over 19,000 of those in 2021. Those all take personnel. Those all take time to conduct. And so that's the request because of the increase in the purchases, the increases in our criminal history. And that's the reasoning behind our request to do the expansion of 8 positions for our criminal justice information systems or services side.
Thank you, Director. I do have a couple of questions. Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Director. Good seeing you and appreciate what all you and your staff do. And I like to tell the group, I'm proud to have served in the finest regiment in the United States Army with the Director here.
Yes, sir.
All the troops and
Hurrah.
for the troops. Director, you mentioned that it's been a 30% increase in firearm sales. Do you see that as a trend that will continue to justify the funding of these positions in the future?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir, Representative. What we have noticed is, one is when we saw the spike as a result of COVID, we expected that spike would drop. It dropped, but it didn't drop dramatically, right? And then now we're seeing this spike. It's interesting to us. I think that what we expect to see is anytime that there is any form of conflict or concern, that those sales are going to continue to surge. And so we do expect that this will be consistent, and we absolutely will need these individuals to be able to keep up with demand.
And what is the fee for the charge for the background check?
It's a $10 fee.
$10 fee?
Yes, sir.
I just hope they can find the ammo for all these guns. Madam Chairman, that takes care of my question.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And along that same line, you mentioned that you already have the funding for this. I assume that's coming from the sales and the processing you're already doing. So that sparks another question. So the $10 fee that we just mentioned, are you clearing anything over and above your cost on that? Is that how you've accumulated some funds? And if so, would you probably know where I'm going with this. Are you in essence overcharging by chance? Because I think this and some other programs we have set up with firearms purchases are supposed to cover the cost. And I know another department has accumulated quite a bit of reserve on top of that. So just wondered if you could assess that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is something we watch very closely. Again, the fee does help us pay for these services, right? We do, and again, when we saw the bump because of COVID, we did realize a reserve from the fee. However, that is not something we expect to sustain, and that's why I said we were conservative in meeting the need that we know we got coming in with the 8 positions. We believe that'll zero us as we move forward. I don't believe that the fee is too much. I don't believe that we're certainly not banking a reserve because of this fee.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Director, going back to comments you made, since the Ukrainian war, I think we're 3 weeks in, maybe give or take. There's been a 30% increase in the purchase of weapons.
Yes.
You probably don't have the answer to this, but I'm asking the question anyway. What's the psychological reasoning behind individuals who may have gone out because of what's going on there and them to say, I need to go out and get armed? My next question, do I need to go out and purchase some more weapons? I mean, I'm just trying to understand that.
Thank you, Representative. I don't know what's going on in their heads. I think it's just a concern for safety, and I think that I think when you see on the news every night that there's an invasion by an outside force, I think that causes concern for safety, and I think that's what causes people to do this. Yeah.
Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I waited to ask you this, Mr. Director. It's been some conversation just recent days about, and I know this is not something that would happen right away, but maybe a centralized location at the state level for expungements, because some of the same crimes are classified differently. And I found this out because I had a piece of legislation that certainly I'm not going to run because it wouldn't work just by giving a blanket expungement, but because of the different classifications of crimes, you can't do that. But what would be your opinion if the financing and the staffing and all was available of a centralized expungement where a citizen could go online in a 1, 2, 3 step to find out if they could be expunged?
Yeah, thank you, Representative. I think that I'd have to study that a little bit harder, but I think that there are one is we certainly do expungement centralized in the TBI, right? We have a unit that does this. I think if the volume increased based on more crimes being allowed to be expunged, we certainly would see a need to increase personnel. And then, the potential of technology to provide some type of assistance in that, I think is something that could certainly be looked at. I think that, again, the biggest concerns on expungement is assuring that, which you mentioned, is taking a closer look at the specific criminal activity that an individual was involved in, and the history that they have. And so I hesitate to say that I know the answer, but I certainly, our team could certainly work on that with you to see if there are if there is a way to more robustly address some of those challenges and concerns.
Well, I know, over the 95 counties, we all have the same problem, and we all, we struggle with our citizens, try to help them on a local basis, and sometimes we can help, sometimes we can't. I don't know what it would take, and maybe this is totally too much to even comprehend or to think about, but because these crimes are so classified in such a different way, it's really hard. Sometimes 2 people who committed basically the same crime, one class qualify and the other one don't. And I just wondered, and I know there are some states who do have systems like this where you could just go online, you can put in whatever information it asks for, and it tells you if you qualify. And again, I know that takes staff, money and all. I'm not forgetting that. Certainly not asking you to do that. But I would like to just sit down and talk to you about that sometime, because I think that might be the answer to what we're looking for in terms of helping our citizens get back to the normalcy that they need to for those who qualify to get back.
Yeah, Representative, I would tell you as well, there are states who have very robust systems that talk to each other, which is, you would think in the 21st century, that's not that wouldn't be a big deal. But unfortunately, in Tennessee, we have a number of systems that don't talk to each other, right? And so, you got 95 counties and you have a number of different systems. And so even just getting the accurate reporting and the disposition of cases is difficult. And so I think there's more that can be done to talk about how do we get a system, a statewide system, right? That is easily accessible and easily adapted to the challenges that we face with the court system. And so there are some ways of doing that. There are other states that have done it. I've had conversations with our peers up in Kentucky. They have a statewide system that seems to work pretty good. So I think there are some examples we can take a look at.
Well, Director, I don't have anyone else on the list. We want to thank you again for being here. Thank you for the work that you and your team do across the state. It's a challenging job, and I think the whack-a-mole analogy is a very apt one in your situation, and unfortunately many others that we deal with. It's you address it one place and another issue crops up somewhere else. So I suppose that for you guys is job security. But we would look forward to the day that we could, if not, would never want to be rid of the TVI, but it'd be nice to be able to skinny you all down because we no longer needed so many services. But sadly, I don't see that day in the near future. Thank you again for your time here today and for your service.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the committee. We appreciate it.
Committee, we are back in session. That completes our budget hearings and expansion hearing for today. We have one more set of budget hearings Monday morning. Listen carefully. One more set Monday morning. Be here, be square, 9 o'clock on Monday, and we will finish up our hearings and move on. I'll tell you on Friday. I'm not certain. It's on your schedule. You have a schedule with those hearings on it. So we will be doing that on Monday. Until then, I could think about it. Chairman Sexton, I do recall you requesting to be a part of this body. Therefore, well, yes, this is going way off the rails. We are adjourned.